10 WWE heels who went too far. Let's watch.
WWE heels are, or at least were, prone to doing outlandish, reprehensible, and sometimes even illegal things in their bid to generate a heated negative response from the viewing audience. Considering how inherently wacky WWE is as a form of entertainment, we as fans usually accept this as part and parcel of the package. But just how far is too far? Call me an old softie, but the following devious act seemed, in a kayfabe sense at least, to be a little disproportionate, all things considered. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and these are 10 WWE heels that went too far. Join us, you smelly bastards. Number 10, the two-man power trip go too extreme. It was always going to be an uphill battle getting the audience to properly hate the beloved Stone Cold Steve Austin, even after he'd sold out and shook hands with the devil in the main event of WrestleMania X7. Having him form an alliance with Triple H as the so-called two-man power trip was a move in the right direction, but many fans still refused to boo the Texas Rattlesnake. In an attempt to turn the tide, WWE booked Austin and Helmsley to commit a heinous act of man-on-woman violence after they, alongside Stephanie McMahon, lost to Team Extreme in the main event of the April 9th, 2001 episode of Raw. Going absolutely ballistic, the power trip took their frustrations out on Lita, with Triple H blasting her in the back of the head and putting the boots to her before laying her out with a pedigree. Austin took things a step further as the flame-haired diva tried to protect boyfriend Matt Hardy, penetrating the human shield with numerous vicious chair shots to the back and midsection before capping off the attack with a stunner. It was a prolonged and violent assault that some found excessive. Number 9, like a scalded dog. After an age playing the mid-card babyface, Kane lost his mask in the summer of 2003 and promptly reverted to his monstrous ways. He chokeslammed Eric Bischoff off the Raw stage, tombstoned Linda McMahon on top of it, and did other dastardly acts such as attaching jumper cables to and electrocuting Shane McMahon's Mean Street Posse. All pretty evil and OTT in their own ways, yes, but paling in comparison to him setting Jim Ross on fire. Good old JR was interviewing the Big Red Machine on Raw, attempting to get some answers for Kane's recent actions when the future mayor of Knox County decided that he didn't appreciate the man in the black hat's line of questioning. Punching him down to the ground, Kane made good on his promise from the beginning of the interview and doused Ross in gasoline before lighting a match. WWE was certainly committed to making the devil's favorite demon a convincing psychopath ahead of his feud with the boss's son, but what amounts to attempted murder on a company executive was perhaps taking things to the extreme. Number 8, peppered steak. There has always been something suspect about the Big Boss Man. I mean, there just had to have been smoke to the fire when Nails made those accusations of prison mistreatment, but he went completely overboard in 1999. As well as commandeering the casket of Big Show's dead dad, the man from Cobb County, Georgia, tormented that head case Al Snow by targeting Snow's dog Pepper. The hardcore champion had recently replaced Head with the dog, which was a play on the one that appeared in a popular Taco Bell commercial at the time. Naturally, Big Boss Man kidnapped the doomed pooch. They then had a match where if Boss Man lost, he would have to return Pepper to Snow. Boss Man won the match, but invited Snow to his hotel room for dinner. The meal Snow ended up consuming tasted a bit peppery because it was Pepper, the goddamn dog. The Big Boss Man fed Al Snow his own dog for dinner. I mean, Christ. And you may be thinking, hey, Adam, that would never happen in real life. Well, unfortunately for you, dear viewer, the whole angle was supposedly, inspired by a real-life rib perpetrated by Mr. Fuji. Number 7, hanging with the Boss Man.
What?
Perhaps the Big Boss Man had a right to be angry in the summer of 1999, given what he had had to endure earlier that year. He was part of the corporation stable who were embroiled in a bitter feud with the Ministry of Darkness. Haha, the Ministry of Darkness. Talk about a group of people who need to learn to lighten up, eh? It was all kidnap this, satanic ritual that with these guys, drama queens.
Like for real though, like can you imagine like the round table, like them sitting down, coming up with ideas for storylines, and then somebody comes up with the idea to turn someone's beloved pet dog into pepper steak and to feed it to someone, and to feed it to the owner of the dog without them knowing that they're Like, that's so disgusting.
WrestleMania 15,
That's so
Bossman
gross.
clashed with Ministry leader
That
The
is so
Undertaker
crazy.
inside Hell in a Cell in a match that
Who would
was
think of
not
that?
only rotten, but that fans were indifferent to because both men were heels at the time. After the dead man
wow.
had extended his streak, the Brood descended from the ceiling and assisted in tying a noose around Bossman's neck and attaching it to the cell, which was then raised to the air. You know, hanging him. Heels have used hanging spots in matches before, usually in something like a bull rope or chain match, but actually going to the trouble to source a noose and make such a big production of it was perhaps going a tad overboard. Number 6, borderline racist. Bradshaw's transition to JBL was sudden and stark. Going from beer-drinking, bar-fighting tag team mid-carder to a suit-wearing, stock market-playing main eventer, the tall Texan did everything he could to become despised. Programmed with WWE champion Eddie Guerrero, JBL began pushing a xenophobic button with his comments and actions right from the off. On the April 8th, 2004 episode of SmackDown, he was shown at the Mexican border looking for illegals trying to cross over so that he could send them back and thus claim SmackDown General Manager Kurt Angle's Great American Award. His ranting about so-called lazy people looking for a handout was bad enough, but then JBL saw a group of supposed immigrants looking to get into America and he physically prevented them from doing so with a swift kick to the backside. Some viewers felt like the whole thing was so on the nose that it was borderline comedic, but to others it hit a raw nerve and they felt as though wrestling was no place to promote racial stigmatization, even if it was at the hands of an irredeemable villain. Number 5, Daddy Knows Best. The Mr. McMahon character wasn't exactly noted for its subtlety, at points becoming a caricature of evil. The genetic jackhammer turned it up to 11 in 2003, feuding with the likes of Hulk Hogan, Zach Gowen, and The Undertaker throughout the year. He also, lest we forget, set about fighting his very own daughter, Stephanie McMahon, who was SmackDown general manager at the time. Vince was upset that the $1 billion princess sided with the Hulkster and Gowen and had tried to break up his ghastly romance with Sable and ended up booking the first ever daddy versus daughter I Quit match at No Mercy in response. That in itself looked dramatic, but there was one moment in the match itself that made viewers uncomfortable. Right at the end of it, Vince began aggressively choking Stephanie with a lead pipe, like he was really going for it. Stephanie didn't say I quit, mind, probably because she couldn't speak due to the fact that her father was, choking her with a lead pipe, forcing her mother Linda to throw in the towel on her behalf.
So crazy.
I know the McMahon family psychodrama birthed many offensive moments, but this seemed a step too far even for the maniacal Mr. McMahon. Number 4, Matt starts the fire.
But are
Brothers
we
fights. This
surprised?
is a fact of life and something that I'm sure a lot of us can relate to. Not me, mind. My brother never repeatedly beat me up, nor did he take my
Think
lunch
of the
money to
things
buy
that didn't get
cigarettes and
approved.
Lads Mags. And he definitely didn't lock me in the downstairs cupboard for hours while he played on my Sega Mega Drive. Anyway, a lot of people can relate to squabbling siblings turning their disputes physical, and naturally, it's been the crux of some memorable wrestling storylines. For example, the one that pitted the Hardys against each other in 2009. Matt's jealousy of Jeff underlined the whole thing and probably would have been enough, but WWE Creative decided that the feud needed more heat, and what's better for heat than an actual fire? So WWE had Matt claim, amongst other things, that he was the one responsible for Jeff's house burning down a year prior. As well as being an arsonist, this made Matt a dog
looked like an
murderer
owl.
because Jeff's beloved Jack was killed in the blaze. Matt later told of how he didn't want to have his character go this far and take credit for real-life tragedy, while Jeff himself was furious that WWE went in that direction and used his real-life suffering on TV. Number 3, poisoning the snake. After almost 4 years away from the company, Jake Roberts returned to WWE in early 1996 with a new outlook on life. A born-again Christian in real life, the Snake preached the word of Jesus and renounced his formerly wicked ways. Jake's recovering alcoholism was the basis of his feud with Jerry Lawler, as the King took great delight in reminding Roberts that he was, deep down, nothing more than a pathetic addict. Their rivalry peaked at SummerSlam, where Jerry beat Jake after hitting him with a bottle of of Jim Beam. But that wasn't enough for the king, as he then decided to enforce a relapse onto his fallen opponent by pouring the bourbon down his throat. For some people, mocking a real-life addiction was in very bad taste and not something that needed to be seen on a supposedly family-friendly wrestling show. Roberts himself was among those who felt it was disrespectful and a line that Lawler just shouldn't have crossed. He was also, shall we say, less than happy that the bottle actually contained the real thing and not iced tea as he'd been promised ahead of time. Number 2.
Oh, they told him it'll be tea in the bottle, and it was actual liquor.
Was one of the most controversial characters of the Attitude Era, and appropriately, he was involved in one of its most controversial storylines too. The Big Valboski found himself feuding with the Kaientai group after he seduced the wife of the group's manager, Mr. Yamaguchi-san. I mean, seriously, just how horny can one man be? You're in the adult entertainment industry by day and hanging around with the likes of Jenna Jameson, and then you get to Monday Night Raw and you have to do the no pants dance with another man's missus. Mr. Yamaguchi-san had every right to be angry, but I'm not sure he was justified in the course of action that he pursued in revenge. The scorned husband made his intentions clear by chopping a salami with a sword, and wouldn't you know it, the next week Kaientai attempted to remove Val's member backstage. Luckily for Venus, the lights went out just before the sword-on-skin contact, thanks to John Wayne Bobbitt flicking the switch right in the nick of time. And if you don't know who John Wayne Bobbitt is, then I will simply say good for you and move swiftly on. Number 1.
Oh, Lorena Bobbitt,
In his pursuit to regain the WWE title, Brock Lesnar once again turned to the dark side, joining forces with Mr. McMahon as the chairman gleefully proclaimed that this new ruthless and downright evil version of the next big thing was the real Brock Lesnar. Brock went on an absolute tear around that time, with one-legged wonder kid Zach Gowen being a target of his wrath. Lesnar just dismantled the poor kid in their one-sided match on SmackDown, beating him to a bloody pulp in front of his own very distressed mother by hitting him with one of the hardest chair shots you're likely to see anywhere. Some might say that was enough, surely, but Brock wasn't finished with young Zack just yet. A fortnight later, a frankly terrifying Lesnar essentially held Gowen hostage, gagging his mouth and taking him to an arena stairwell where he dumped him out of the chair and beat on the injured leg before putting him back in the chair and choking him out prior to pushing him down a flight of stairs. As if you weren't scared of Brock Lesnar already.
Yeah. Okay, so like the writers and the creators are like, you know, they're a little unhinged back then. They're a little crazy. Like, how do you come up with somebody's just out of this world as stories and ideas? Like, imagine the things that didn't get approved, but I believe some of these storylines, some of the people probably went off script just a tiny bit. Like with the whole alcohol thing. I feel like maybe that was probably off script. I don't know. As like to be a funny prank, but it's not funny at all because he had like an actual addiction. So to do that is like fucked up. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this reaction, y'all. Leave some comments down below. Let me know what you guys think. I will see y'all in the next one. Toodle.